Far from day, far from night, out of time, out of sight, in between earth and sea, we shall fly. Follow me. This is Vaguely Scientific. C'est moi, I'm forced to admit 'tis I humbly reply, I am Derek. I wonder what the king is doing tonight. What merriment is the king pursuing tonight? Maybe Jim knows. Hi, Jim.
He's playing Fortnite.
Oh, that's disappointing. In short, there's simply not a more congenial spot than here with Jonathan. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me again, guys.
Yay! Mm-hmm. So this is a show where we answer the most ridiculous questions that audience have sent us in a manner that we like to call vaguely scientific. But before we tackle those questions, Jim is going to provide us a fun science fact of the day. Jim?
All right. I find this one very interesting because there's so much controversy surrounding Red Delicious apples. It turns out at one point, Red Delicious apples were actually delicious. But as they bred them, they were breeding more for appearances. They were breeding so that they had a longer shelf life, and when they bred to make them have a longer shelf life, they had less sugar and they had less, they were a little bit harder. So they accidentally sacrificed flavor for making them pretty and last long in the supermarket. Oops.
Interestingly enough, that's exactly what the pasteurization process of orange juice does.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about this.
Yeah. I wish that we could fix Red Delicious apples.
I mean, just buy Gala apples.
Oh, okay. Good point.
The whole breeding spectrum of apples fascinates me. Not to make it a whole subject, but it's there's so much there and it's so interesting.
I'm so interested in how different apples taste from one another.
Right?
Yeah.
I was doing a thing for a while for my job. I needed to buy an apple for a very specific thing a couple times a week. And I would get to eat the apple at the end. What would happen is I would just buy a different kind of apple every day. And I was like, I can't believe these don't even taste the same. Some of them look identical and they taste totally different.
The one I always laugh at is Granny Smith's and how different they are because they're very tart.
Yeah. I wasn't prepared for that, actually, because I'd never had a Granny Smith apple.
That's the one I usually default towards if I want an apple.
I'm real into the Gala apples.
Gala apples are good. I always liked Fuji apples.
I've heard the Fuji's are really good, too.
I like most, if an apple comes from Japan, there's a safe bet that I like it.
Yeah.
If a giant robot comes from Japan, there's a safe bet that I like it.
We know.
Yeah. That's actually not even a little bit true.
There's quite a bit of giant robots from Japan. They can't all be good.
I don't even like all the Gundam series. Gundam Age is extremely bad.
But G Gundam is best Gundam.
It's true, yeah.
Well, that went in a weird direction. Why don't we move
back on topic?
Why don't we start a new topic, I guess, and talk about this first question here?
Okay.
Alrighty.
This question comes to us from Megan. If there were a successful brain transplant, who would the resulting person be? The receiver of the new brain or the brain in the new body? That's a very difficult question to answer.
Yeah, well, we've never done it.
Right.
Yet.
But we have done a head transplant.
Have we?
On a monkey.
Oh.
Have we?
Yeah. I didn't look up the date for this. I want to say it was the 60s, but I probably should have looked it up. But there was a scientist. Yeah, he's a scientist. I don't know why I qualified that. It was
very odd.
It was just some weirdo in an alley and just decided.
He was a neurosurgeon. His name was Robert White, and he did a monkey head transplant. And it actually worked mostly. The problem that ended up happening was that after 9 days, there was a very fierce immune response as tends to be with any organ transplant, and the head was rejected by the body. But
interesting.
It appeared that the monkey head was basically it was not a head transplant as much as it was a body transplant, because the body was the head was the same monkey, and it seemed to be the same monkey as before the head, I should say.
I want to say that I may be presuming too much in this, I guess, but I would assume that most people would expect that the brain would be the dominant personality, I guess.
Yeah. That's what I would expect too. But the thing is that the thing I found very interesting about all this actually was that I was looking through sort of ideas of what might happen if you did this. Okay. And it seems as though there would be a really big period of adjustment, because the body would be sort of used to producing like hormones and other chemicals in a certain quantity at certain times, and your brain would be used to a completely different set of, neurotransmitters and hormones and what have you. So
right,
it would be like it might be even worse than puberty, actually.
That's interesting. I wrote kind of exactly that down, just out of... So, I mean, the idea of where is consciousness, right? And some people have speculated that consciousness is just kind of a collection of memories, and that's way oversimplifying, but...
Yeah.
But that's a thing I've heard. And the idea with memories is that nobody can actually remember things 100% accurately. Like they're always going to be kind of reprinted on your brain when you recall them.
Right.
And so that kind of like the brain's probably where the memories are recorded, but there's a lot of context to like your entire body is, as you said, like hormones and different chemicals and stuff that like feed that. So like, even though it might be your consciousness, you might have a brand new personality.
Yeah. Actually, one of the really interesting things I was reading is that there's a little bit of evidence that like gut bacteria can be responsible for certain kinds of anxiety. So that could be something you get to look forward to.
That is interesting.
So also along that personality thing too, I should have looked it up more, but I remember a case study, I guess, if you will, about a man that was a railroad worker, and he ended up...
Phineas Gage, right?
I think that's it.
I do know who this is.
He was working, and he ended up, through an accident, getting a railroad spike through his frontal lobe of his brain. And before this incident, he was very friendly, very nice, very personable. And after it, he was just very withdrawn, very like complete polar opposite person, so there was some evidence there that your personality is stored in your frontal lobe. So having so much of it destroyed from that railroad spike completely changed him. Or he got a railroad spike through his head, and that would make anyone cranky. So I can see either one being pretty accurate.
Yeah.
There have been stories, I don't know, something tells me it's somebody who recovered from a stroke, but it might have been a physical, like, blunt force head trauma. I don't remember, but there was definitely a story I read where somebody had something happen to their brain, and they were somebody who, like, was a very pragmatic, like, mathematician type person. And when whatever this thing that happened to them happened, they kind of lost the ability to do math.
Oh, wow.
But they found that they became very artistic, which they never had been before.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. I think that it's probably not too controversial to say that the brain is like where the consciousness hangs out, but there's so much body context. Like, if you were just a brain, then there would be nothing. You would have a thought. You could think about things, but you couldn't see and you couldn't taste. Like, you need to have that body context.
Yeah.
Right.
And as you grow and you are comfortable in your body, you get so used to the way that it moves and behaves, and you expect, like, if you have a pain in your knee and it's like, oh, that's just the normal pain in my knee, it's fine.
Right.
You get used to the body that you're in, and ugh.
I was thinking that like you could take a perfectly healthy brain and put it into the body of someone, let's say, who is like addicted to heroin.
Oh my.
And that is a
jeez.
chemical addiction. Like the body needs that at that point.
Right.
And,
By the way, 1970 was the monkey head transplant.
oh, I didn't know anything about that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's news to me. That's really interesting. So, also on another more morbid side too, ice pick lobotomies used to be a thing as well. For, I don't want to say, I guess, undesired personalities. They would just do an ice pick lobotomy where it's just a nice big long ice pick right up through the nose and just scrambled eggs a little bit, and there you go, new personality.
I mean, mental health care has always left something to be desired.
Yeah.
Even to this day.
Yeah.
That reminds me of I'd always heard that like if you have like super really bad epilepsy, they can like cut your brain in half and it helps.
I have heard that. That does sound familiar. I don't
think it's all the way through the halves of your brain, but I think there's a specific place in the middle of the hemispheres that they cut that I guess helps to reduce the onset of seizures, or like maybe keeps the misfirings from happening.
I know there's context here, but just the sentence, they cut out half of your brain and it helps, not something I thought I'd hear today.
No, I cut out half your brain, cut your brain in half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so just like disconnect it?
Yeah. Like not all the way through, just like a part of it.
Oh.
It's the corpus callosum. That's what it is. I'm looking it up on the interwebs. I don't know how well it works. I don't know if they even still do it, but on Wikipedia it says is a palliative surgical procedure, so maybe they do still do it.
Weird.
You can always go to the Re-Education Center too.
I forgot we're going to have Simpsons references today.
It doesn't help that I've been watching the series again lately and been finding all my favorite quotes. So there's that.
I think the thing that we're omitting here that I think we need to talk about is that if you plop your brain into somebody else's body, they're not going to be the same height and weight as you. So it's going to move real different.
Yeah.
Your equilibrium's going to be off probably. And
yeah.
Muscle memory too is a thing.
Yeah.
So that's going to be very much knocking glasses off the counter all the time.
Yeah. I've thought about, because even if you were to put, I've thought of this before in like a science fiction sense. If you had like, because body swapping is a very common television trope, right? And I've thought of, just because you put like a kung fu expert's brain into somebody who has never exercised before, like they're not gonna be able to do kung fu.
Yeah.
Right. I remember when I hit my very last growth spurt, I was probably like 14 or something like that. My sisters were babies at the time, and so we had baby gates up around the house. And for like months, I was like, I could step over the baby gates, but then I started tripping over them, and I was like, why am I tripping over these baby gates? It's because it turns out I grew 2 inches in like 6 months, and it was wild.
Jim and I are both over 6 feet tall, if for the listeners, for this to make sense, I guess. But I used to rollerblade when I was a kid, and I always used to think it was fun. And then like a few years ago, I figured, how come I ever stopped rollerblading? Oh, because I don't have rollerblades that fit anymore. So I decided to go get some rollerblades, and I started doing it again. When I was a kid, it was not difficult for me to stay balanced. Like I never really fell down. I guess I was just kind of good at it when I was a kid. Not like, not like extreme sports good, but like,
right.
And
could rollerblade.
It's like rollerblade. I could skate down the street, and I never thought I was going to fall. So I got rollerblades probably maybe 2017 or something. And for the first time since I've been an adult, so since I was over 5 feet, I tried these rollerblades, and I realized that I'm so top heavy that it was really hard for me to stay upright.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. After that last growth spurt, my center of gravity settled pretty high up, which means I'm actually kind of difficult to knock over.
That's
Which is
always
weird.
good.
It should be the opposite, because if you have a high center of gravity, you should be easy to tip over. But for whatever reason, it like settled like right in my belly button. So it's like higher than it was, but it's like there's a good equilibrium because I'm mostly legs, honestly. My torso is a normal size and I've got like 3 feet of legs. So
I think the only other thing I was going to bring up was the Bruce Campbell movie, Man with the Screaming Brain.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
So I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, but it's about an American businessman, CEO. Long story short, goes to Bulgaria, almost dies, and mad scientist replaces part of the American's brain that is dead with tissue from a dead man's brain. So it's not actually take the brain out, swap with a new brain, but there is parts of both brains in the one man, the man with the screaming brain.
Yeah.
And it's really neat. I thought, because it's been years since I've seen the movie, I thought it was an actual brain swap, but it's more of two brains combined into one, which helps argue for the whole split personality that the main character has in it. Yeah. I just thought it was really interesting that they were very specific of like, it's not a new brain in another body. It's very specifically two brains that are fused into one.
It's like a brain graft, kind of.
Right. Yes, exactly. So you could argue that both personalities would be there because it has pieces of both brain.
Right.
Whether that brain graft would work or not is a completely different argument, but
yeah.
Sci-fi.
There's a lot of like sci-fi, like futuristic sci-fi. It's done a lot in this cyberpunk genre of likes to do stuff with the idea of implanting memories into people's brains. And The Matrix does it where they can just all of a sudden kung fu, right? They upload, but then there's a lot of like identity crisis storylines in that genre that is that's kind of in the same vein.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to mention was Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
And something that I guess I was aware of, but I never really thought about until I was like thinking about this question, was that like Frankenstein is very specifically not meant to be Dr. Frankenstein brings somebody back from the dead. It's he creates a new person from parts. And so like the mystery isn't like what brain did you, I mean, young Frankenstein,
they got an abnormal brain.
Right. They got an abnormal brain. But like in the book, it's not important who the brain came from specifically, because the secret to what Dr. Frankenstein figured out is how to give this thing like a new life.
Yeah.
In that sense, a brain is just hardware, and you can
swap it out for a new one.
Right.
New hard drive when the old one fails.
Yeah.
You just copy all the memory over.
One of the things that I thought was kind of interesting that I was reading about is that they say that the brain and parts of the central nervous system might be what they call immune privileged. And what that basically means is that in theory, a body shouldn't reject a brain, for example. But I was trying to look into it, and it seems like since we've never transplanted a brain, that there's not really a way to test this. And in some animals, it's not immune privileged, because we've been playing with brains for a while in different animals. But that's something to think about as well. Like if your brain is likely to be rejected by a host body, and with the monkey, it was the whole head. So, I mean, there was the brain, the skull, and the skin, and all that got rejected eventually. But, I mean, if you think about, putting your brain into a new body and hoping it doesn't get attacked by that body's immune system.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be the first one to do it.
Right. Isn't it still like, we still don't really, like even today, isn't it like organ transplants still kind of only prolong people's life? Like they will eventually fail, that we've figured out, or?
I know there are medicines and prescriptions that will help delay, if not completely stop, the autoimmune reaction that does lead to the rejections. But I I don't want to say either way or one way or the other that it's for sure always will fail or it never.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think it's like case by case.
I do believe it is very case by case.
I kind of stumbled over my words there for a minute because technically all medicine is just like delaying death.
That's fair.
That's what life is.
Right? Yeah.
The wild thing about like organ transplants is that like you have to suppress your immune system enough that it doesn't reject the organ, but you also still really need an immune system.
Oh yeah.
True. It's a tricky balance.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd say the brain is the place where you have all your human goo, your haunted meat clod. So you take all that with you into a new body.
The brain is where the heart is.
Yeah, the brain is where yeah, exactly.
Well, we have a second question for this episode. So why don't I tell you what it is?
Do it.
Sure. Question 2 this week comes to us from Jonathan. Where do you draw the line with vegetarian/vegan meals? And for example, is a sapient plant like an ant still vegetables, or is it considered meat?
I don't know who that Jonathan is, but he's got a good name.
So
I think first thing I want to mention is I'm not vegan. So I apologize in advance if I say something really stupid.
I think I was going to say it's important to say I'm not vegan. To my knowledge, none of us are.
I am technically not vegan, but I am.
So you're not vegan.
I'm not vegan. I'm kind of vegetarian, I guess.
That's fair.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to correctly word this. I am dating someone who is vegetarian.
Okay.
Yes, someone who is vegetarian.
Okay.
Because it is very specifically the muscle that bothers her. She can't eat meat because when you eat meat, your blood vessels dilate. And she would get very severe migraines after eating meat. Long story short, she found out that from eating meat, they seem to think that after eating meat, the blood vessels in her brain would dilate and just give her terrible migraines. So
she needs a body transplant.
Yes, she could use a brain transplant.
Yeah.
So after cutting meat out of her diet, she found that the migraines were just not there anymore. And it's been fine ever since.
Wow.
So it's not like a moral thing. It's just like
I mean, she loves animals. So it's mostly, it is mostly a health issue, but it is very much a moral thing as well because she loves animals. And
that's fair.
Well, I also love animals, but I think many of them are delicious.
Especially with the side of potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I wanted to say, I thought it was worth mentioning that none of us are vegan because we are going to talk about this. And some people do subscribe to a vegan diet out of morality. And,
I think that's totally fair, honestly.
I agree as well. After being very interested in other cultures' foods and dishes as well, America eats way too much meat. So I very much appreciate the whole vegetarian, vegan moral aspect of it too, because it is honestly a problem that can be easily fixed.
Right.
Well, getting to the reason that I thought it was worth mentioning that is because one of the things I took from this question is the idea of, why might certain people not eat specific things? So whether or not a sapient plant is meat or not. And what it kind of boiled down to, like every vegan I know kind of has a slightly different perspective of it. Some of them do it just because it's a diet, and some of them do it for their own personal morality. And as far as I understand, there's no real official rules to veganity. Which is a word I made up.
The main rule that I found was just like, you can't eat things that are of an animal or an animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Vegan is nothing from an animal. Vegetarian is plant only.
Yeah.
nothing, no fish or meat. And then pescatarian is meat except fish.
They'll
Yeah,
eat fish, yeah.
I know that vegans don't eat honey, and they don't, which even though honey is sort of like a byproduct of animal, and they tend to try to avoid products that were tested on animals, which is, I think, also a very valiant thing to do as well. So,
well, it's interesting that you mention honey specifically, because I know several vegans who say they don't really have much of a problem with honey.
Yeah, I mean, because you're not hurting any of the bees by harvesting the honey.
So the argument could be made that vegan can be, and the moral aspect of it is it's no harm to animals compared to no products at all from animals.
It does seem like it's a sliding scale a little bit. Not as sliding as, like, it's pretty rigid as far as a diet goes, but there's the teensiest bit of wiggle room.
Right. Yeah. Which, that's fair. That makes sense. Another thing, too, that's interesting is that there's products that may not have meat or animal products in them, but used it in the process to create it. Like, I know, recently, but several years ago, Guinness was not vegan-free, vegan-safe, because they used fish bladders in the process of its creation.
I know that, is it Jell-O that uses, like, bone marrow or something?
Yeah, hooves and bone marrow.
Yeah.
Growing up, my dad would never eat jelly beans because he said he didn't like eating horse hooves.
I just don't like jelly beans.
I like jelly beans.
The thing that I know mostly from, if it's a moral thing, I don't want to eat animals. I've heard, you've probably heard this quote before, they don't eat anything with a face.
Yeah.
Which is something that I find interesting.
So starfish are okay.
Starfish are okay. Well, the thing that leads me to is the Ent question, right?
That's kind of where I was going with this.
Right? Because one thing, like, nobody's trying to eat Treebeard, right?
Right.
But
except for that one Futurama skit.
Except for that one. But the difference, I don't think it necessarily matters. I mean, Ents, if they are tree people, like, you don't really want to, most things don't want to eat bark or the hardwood anyway.
Right.
But I don't think anybody's objection to eating Treebeard or another Ent would be that it is an animal. It would be that it can talk.
Yeah.
Right?
So the sapience is the big issue.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that because I was thinking about how, generally speaking, and I know that there are a couple places out there where it's okay, but generally speaking, we don't eat dolphins because they are viewed as fairly intelligent. And a lot of people are starting to feel the same way about octopi, is because octopi are remarkably intelligent, and a lot of people don't want to eat them because they're intelligent. So I think that would be a really good argument to make against eating Treebeard. I don't want to eat other human beings at all. And like,
even a person that eats meat, if you ran into a talking cow, I feel like they probably wouldn't want to eat that cow.
Well, I mean, that's what Arthur Dent had to deal with at the restaurant at the end of the universe.
He wanted to be eaten, though.
But that cow was bred for that.
Yeah, that seems kind of
red,
cruel,
delicious apples.
TBH.
Forgot about that scene.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to eat like another person. Like, I would have a hard time eating a person in a survival situation, because like that's a person who talked and did human stuff at me. So
and did human stuff.
And Treebeard is functionally like human intelligence, so I would feel the same way about Treebeard, even if he wasn't all barky.
Yeah. Well,
a question can be asked, I guess, if Treebeard, because that's the named Ent that we have, if Treebeard were to be a fruit-producing plant-human hybrid, like, would you eat an apple off of tree? And before anyone says it, Ents and trees are not the same thing.
Yeah. I actually wanted to ask about that, because I know y'all know about Lord of the Rings, and I saw the Two Towers one time in maybe 2003 or 4. But I was looking up a lot of descriptions of Ents, and they said they are tree-like creatures.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what kind of organs this guy got?
So that's where I was going to go as well.
Okay, cool.
Like, are they just tree-shaped and they have, like, a full animal digestive tract and, like...
Right? So he looks like a tree, but he has to have muscles to move because he's a moving tree. So he has to have some kind of muscle system. So if you're... But he's still plant-based, I guess. A plant-based life form.
Yeah.
Well, to complicate it further... while Ents technically would, by this definition, be tree-like creatures, there are also animate trees in The Lord of the Rings. So,
great.
Oh, there are. That's true.
Treebeard is a kind of like a shepherd of them.
He's an ambulatory tree. Whereas there are also animated trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question could be either, like...
Yeah. I'm okay with saying that Treebeard would maybe not have muscles just because there's magic.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, there are a lot of plants that do move relatively quickly. Like, what's the one where the leaves fold up? Let me Google this real quick.
The Venus flytrap?
Oh, of course there are Venus flytraps. Those move very, very fast.
That's a reflex, and that's not a muscle, I don't think, though.
It's a mimosa plant. That's what it's called. They have a reflex where if you run, they have alternating leaves. They look a little bit like ferns, and if you run your finger along them, they fold up so that it like closes because they're trying to protect their leaves, I guess. But I mean, that's a very fast thing. Like our biology teacher in high school had one, and you run your finger on it, and all of its leaves shut closed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, actually. I think you can buy them pretty easily. I'd like to get one someday, but I'd kill every plant I own.
So also along the lines of Ents move because of magic, they do have the Ent drafts, which are Ent drafts, rather. It's believed to be their primary source of nourishment. It's just a magical brew that gives the Ents
Ent Guinness
nourishment.
Yeah, basically.
But then also Pippin drinks it in the extended edition. And in the books, that actually makes him taller than most hobbits once he goes back to the Shire.
Yeah, I remembered that happened, but didn't remember anything further than that. So I'm glad you said it.
So maybe if he keeps drinking it, he'll grow bark and become an Ent.
In theory.
It's kind of scary.
Maybe. It's a tree bark. It's how you cast tree bark.
Or is he just going to be like human-sized hobbit?
Ooh.
It's a new breed of Ent hobbit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that how dryads happen, maybe?
Oh, I wonder.
Oh, yeah.
Can you eat a dryad?
Can you eat a dryad? Well, depends on the folklore.
Dryads are more spirit than they are flesh, right?
As Allie would say, everything is edible once.
Yeah, well, unless it's non-corporeal.
Yeah, it depends if it is a spirit or if it is a physical creature.
There are bold mycologists and there are old mycologists, but there are no old and bold mycologists.
I don't get it.
Mycology is the study of mushrooms.
Yeah.
So there are bold mycologists who try and eat different mushrooms, but they don't live very long.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Mushrooms are poisonous, Jim.
Not all.
Not all of them.
If you were a bold mycologist, you'd know which ones are poisonous and which ones weren't.
I think that's a smart mycologist.
That's a smart one.
No, if you were bold, you'd find out pretty quick.
Okay. So slightly loop back to an old tangent. I'm going to go with you cannot eat a dryad because they are spirits.
Okay,
that live
that's what
in
I thought.
trees.
I mean, that's fair. That totally is fair. I was thinking, so let's take away the what is the definition of an Ent, because we could definitely talk about that more later, and we could, listeners, if you want. But I want to say, let's say it's a tree that functions as a creature. So it is wood, right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, if you're talking about this like medical reason that like you know eating meat is bad for you or something, I would argue it would be less bad for you to eat this plant. Aside from like you might want to stick to the leaves and not the hardwood part.
Yeah.
But then the subject of whether or not it's moral doesn't really matter if it's an animal specifically. And the other thing I then wanted to talk about is due to a lot of convoluted things in history, we don't consider fish the same as like quote unquote meat.
Yeah.
Because fish meat is meat, like by definition.
Muscle.
But through a lot of things with, you know, Roman Catholicism and you know, and history and stuff, fish is not considered the same as like land meat. But having said that, fish meat is different from land meat.
It's true,
So, like,
yeah.
So how does that work?
So I guess that was my argument of like, what's ent muscle like? What's ent meat
Yeah.
like? Because they are not a spirit inhabiting a tree. They are made by one of the Valar. I'm probably going to get yelled at for that, but I'm pretty sure it's one of the Valar. But they were created at the behest of Yavanna. Let's click that. She is a Ainur. I'm sorry. Yeah, and Valar. So there. I'm on the Wikipedia, unless the Wikipedia is wrong. So anyway.
Fairy person.
Remember the difference of the Ainur and the Valar offhand, so forgive me for that one.
Right.
But anyway, so one of the gods of Lord of the Rings created the Ents. So they are actually a race of beings that aren't like spirits inhabiting a tree. They are actually created alive and whatnot.
Yeah.
So whether that means they are more tree-like in substance or they are more muscle-like in substance because they actually move is a different argument for a different episode, I guess.
Maybe their insides are kind of like, you know how like vines are woody, but they're flexible?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what their insides are like whatever's inside of like a climbing vine.
I mean, since you bring it up, we can just go on this tangent, I suppose. Like, why not?
Oh boy.
I just didn't do any research about this.
Me
but
either.
For something to move, like with muscles and stuff, it requires a circulatory system of some kind, because you require oxygen.
Yeah.
So it would, in that sense, regardless of what the muscle is, it could be like a more fibrous muscle, but it would have to have, like, it couldn't just have xylem and phloem carrying water unless it was a hydraulic system. Oh, I didn't think of that.
So it'd be like how spiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're also going to go down this muscle rabbit hole, let's open up this one too. Do they have fast twitch muscles or slow twitch muscles?
It's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
Yeah. What?
I would argue that they have slow twitch muscles, so they're more
What is the difference?
So turtles have slow twitch muscles, and rabbits, squirrels have fast twitch muscles.
Oh, okay.
That's the easiest way to describe it. Fast twitch are very sudden, quick, sharp movements, so you can like get out of the way of prey. I mean, predators.
Because my gut response was going to just be based on the fact that it's kind of a bigger, slow-moving creature.
Yeah, I would argue that they do have slow twitch. And
yeah, but didn't they like run at a wall or something in that movie? I don't know.
What do humans have? That's the answer to that.
I've seen turtles headbutt shoes pretty hard. They're quick with that, but
Some
that doesn't
turtles
mean
can move fast.
Yeah. I think the big difference is that the energy consumption. Fast twitch uses a lot of energy quickly. Slow twitch is more of a slow burn.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't use the slow twitch.
It depends if it has to be in like short bursts or not.
Right.
Yeah.
I would argue what I know of Ents is that they don't like to move if they don't have to.
That's fair. I don't
That
either.
is true.
Right? So
Have we considered that Ents are just big tree Gundams with a tiny chipmunk piloting it?
No, Jim, we haven't.
Well, maybe
I
we
like
should.
this approach, though. And now I want to talk about Voltron, too.
Actually, it's closer to like the thing in Men in Black where the little Aquilian alien was in the head of the guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Because the Ents aren't huge. They're what, like 10 feet tall?
I don't know if they...
I think at least. I think they're a lot taller than that.
Oh, really?
I think they're comparable to trees, but I could be wrong.
I don't know anything about Lord of the Rings.
Merry and Pippin are like, what, 3 feet?
Yeah,
Four-
Hobbits is
4 feet?
around 3 feet.
We are comparing them to hobbits. I forgot about that.
So hobbits come up to like their knee-ish, maybe a little less, shins. So
maybe like 12, 15 feet.
I
Yeah.
bet there's a canonical answer to this.
Oh, for
I mean,
sure.
if you just compare in the movie, you could.
14 feet tall, it says.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
12 to
on-
15
on,
feet.
on average. Yeah. So they're taller than people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a small garden tree, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been much easier to cut down than the tree I had in my backyard. Also, I could just tell it to leave.
Because it's an animate creature.
Yeah. I wouldn't have to cut it down. I'd be like, hey, can you go live next door now? And being a tree, they'd be like, I guess. There's still sun over there. It's fine.
Wow. There is something to... I think this would work. I think an animate plant thing could work. You'd just have to add some different systems, some different body systems to it. But
Yeah.
there's also an interesting perspective that it's just a creature that resembles a tree.
Yeah. I think to really cut to the heart of this question, I would like to discuss the Wizard of Oz very briefly.
Okay.
Do you remember in the Wizard of Oz where Dorothy said she's hungry and the Scarecrow's like, haha, watch this. And the Scarecrow goes and antagonizes a tree and the tree gets
Yeah.
mad and starts pelting them with apples.
And they throw apples at him, yeah.
Yeah, and then Dorothy gets to eat apples. And it's like, is that ethical? I would posit yes, because the tree itself is hurling apples at you. So that's like, it's a sapient tree, but it's like...
Well, if you didn't want them, I'll take them.
This
Yeah,
is going to be...
exactly.
I'm gonna pull a Justin here, and I'm going to be more scientific than you expected me to be.
Good.
Plants that bear fruit want animals to eat the fruit to spread their seeds.
That is extremely true,
Fair.
actually.
Yeah. So I think it is definitely... So the trees were... I think the trees had a little bit of the upper hand in that exchange.
Yeah.
They were like, we get to hit you with hard objects, and also you're going to help us propagate our species.
To hit more people with hard objects.
Yeah.
Yeah. To hit more... Yes. And that's where cannonball trees come from.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, conversely, the Tin Man being out in those woods, which is where they found him and how they found him, actually, he was murdering those trees, and I think that's a little wrong.
He was murdering those trees. Well, he was a lumberjack.
Yeah.
It was morally inexcusable.
Yeah.
But was he a tree farmer, though? He might have been planting new trees. You don't know.
I don't know. That's true. In the sequel, he becomes king of a kingdom.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There is a sequel.
There are like 30 sequels.
There's several.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
Yeah.
It's, in the original books. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, listeners, let us know if we were to successfully transplant an Ent, which forest would be the dominant forest? I don't know.
Burnham Wood.
Burnham Wood. I like it, Jim. I like it. Do we have any listener mail this week?
We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet @VaguelySci. And this email comes to us from Tiffany in regards to episode 97, Modifying a Groundhog from Stock.
Ooh.
And Tiffany writes, when it comes to tying groundhogs to balloons, there's ethics. Probably.
I agree.
Yeah. Probably.
And then probably. I mean, yeah.
Thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, you can email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all the other great places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Don't eat them though, because then they won't listen.
No, they'll be dead.
Won't listen or can't listen?
They
good
won't
point.
listen.
Both, probably.
Fair.
Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. You can get our designs on all kinds of cool stuff, even the one that says there's ethics, probably. There's lots of different ways you can get that.
Yay! So, thank you to Jonathan for coming back and talking to us.
It's always fun. Thank you, guys.
Mm-hmm.
For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Jonathan.
On second thought, let's not go to Camelot. 'Tis a silly place.
True.
Toodaloo, everyone.
We'll see if my cat decides to type more on my keyboard tonight.
That's what happened to Freakazoid.
Oh, touche.
Yeah, maybe you'll get zapped into the internet.
I mean, if I get a cool TV show about it, then sure, that's fine.
Yeah, Freakazoid was very ahead of its time.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see a lot of it, but I do remember it being really good.
Yeah, I feel like it predicted like meme culture in 2022.
Yeah.
Is that what year we're in right now, 2022?
Well, it's 2020 part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be 2020 forever. The world may have just ended, and this is just purgatory.
This is purgatory.
Simulation glitched.
Yeah. But at least we have Vaguely Scientific.
This is true.
Yeah.
Our metric for time anymore.
Yeah.
Is that an at least? Is that really the silver lining?
I mean, I think that might be the one silver lining.
That's sadder than a silver lining should be.